you can have a high-end goal and more power to you. Well, you need a pathway to it.
Absolutely.
You know, if it's 10 stories up above you, you need a staircase to get there, right? And so you have to build the staircase too.
I grew up really rapidly. I've worked 20-hour days, and I was also blessed. And I got to work with some very important people, and I got great results, and they told other people. So by the time I was 19, just almost 20, I had become quite successful in external terms, at least, in the world.
Well, I try to make everything concrete so that it's actually implementable. I mean, there's a lot of high-level abstractions in the book because it ranges up into the theological and the philosophical, but it's always grounded in what you can actually do in your life practically. You want to bridge that gap from the highest abstraction down to the lowest level of behavior so that it becomes implementable. You know, you wake up at 3 in the morning and you know. And then you think of the people that you admire yourself, or perhaps you can at least live with yourself when you're taking responsibility, at least for yourself. And so that settles your conscience. But then if you look at the people that you spontaneously admire, and so the act of spontaneously admiring someone is the manifestation of the instinct for meaning, right? And this is partly why people are so enamored of sports figures, because the sports figures are playing out the drama of attaining the goal, of attaining a certain kind of, let's say, psychological and physical perfection in pursuit of the goal. That's the drama. And to spontaneously admire that is to have that instinct for meaning latch onto something that can be used as a model. And then that model should be transcribed into something that's applicable in life. You know, and you really like to see, in an athletic performance, you really like to see someone who's extremely disciplined and in shape do something physically remarkable, and to stretch themselves even beyond their previous exploits, because you really like to see a brilliant move in an athletic match. But you also like to see that person ensconced in a broader moral framework, so that not only are they trying to win and disciplining themselves in pursuit of that victory, and then stretching themselves so they're continually getting better, but they're doing it in a way that helps develop their whole team, and that's good for the sport in general.
Some part of me was, the mechanism in the back of our head, that 2 million-year-old brain, right? The fight or flight mechanism. I didn't know how to manage that so well. And part of my brain was like, well, maybe you have all this happening so quick because you're going to die young. And I literally became obsessed with not just getting hit by a truck or something, it was cancer. I was going to wilt away. And I don't know where it came from. And I knew better intellectually, but it was there. And then the first time I entered my life was before 31. I entered my life through someone else, my girlfriend. And she came home crying uncontrollably. And Jay, I mean, she was like, what is it? What is it? My mom. And then my mom has cancer. And then even worse, they gave her 9 weeks to live. They just sent her home. And I think if it would have been me, I think my fear would have overcome me. But most people will do more for people they love, whether it be their kids or their family or someone else, than they'll ever do for themselves. And so it's like I kicked into gear. That's what I do. It's like, okay, if there's a problem, there's a solution. I said, look, there's thousands of people that had stage 4 cancer and that are alive today. We're going to find out what they do. We're going to do the same thing. She's not going to die. And then I just read every book I could on cancer. And I came across this one book called One Answer to Cancer. It's not the book I'd recommend today because there's so many better ones today, but it was written by this dentist who had pancreatic cancer, which is the most vicious cancer of all. He was given 6 weeks to live, and this is 12 years later, and he's alive. And so he laid out what he did to cleanse his body, and it sounded radical in those days, pancreatic enzymes. So I went to this woman, her name was Jenny. She was in her 40s. And I said, Jenny, I know you don't want to die. I said, but just going home and do nothing, why don't you read this book? This guy was in worse shape than you, and see if you wanted to apply this. And she read it, and she got inspired. And I gave her Azamanthika to kind of work on her head a little bit. Anyway, long story short, within about 3 weeks, she had a tumor that was protruding in her shoulder and then went in her feminine organs. And you couldn't see anything 3 weeks later in her shoulder. And at the period of, I think, about 9 weeks, when she was supposed to die, and she looked good, she had great energy, and literally looked transformed. The doctor finally said, this is crazy, let's do exploratory surgery. So they went in her body, and all they could find left of the cancer was something the size of my pinky's fingernail. And so the doctor said, this is a miracle. She said, it is a miracle, but let me tell you what I did. And he was like, no, this is spontaneous remission. I don't want to hear what you did. What you did doesn't matter. But she's in her mid-80s today. She's still alive. And that shifted me from victimhood, like, oh my God, cancer could strike me down, to believing I'll be great. So all the more shocking, now I'm a total biohacker. I'm a health nut. I've got to get on stage and do, 12, 13 hours with 20,000 people. And I got to do it 3 or 4 days in a row. And I make these huge demands, but I also have this incredibly intense regimen of taking care of myself. And then I'm a helicopter pilot. So I went to go get my license renewed. You have to do a physical. And I come back and I keep getting these messages from the doctor saying, my assistant saying, doctor says he's got to talk to you. And I was like, I'm leaving for the south of France to an event. Tell him to just send a report. And I got home this one night and taped to my master bathroom bedroom door was a note from my assistant saying, you've got to call the doctor. He says it's an emergency. So what do you do? What do you feel like? Well, all my old fears just started flashing back. It's like, oh my God, I mean, I treat my body so great. How could I have cancer? But I do fly all the time. That's radiation. You know, your head goes crazy. At least mine did.